Daniel's life did not start like most children's lives. From the very beginning, things were difficult for him. He was born into a family that struggled a lot. His parents loved him, but they had many problems that made it hard for them to take care of him properly. When Daniel was very young, his parents faced serious challenges, and soon he found himself living in a world that felt uncertain and confusing. One day, after a big family problem, Daniel was taken away from his home and placed in foster care. At first, Daniel did not understand why he had to leave. He felt scared and lonely. The world outside his parents' home was strange, and he missed the small things he used to know, his old toys, his little room, and even the sounds and smells of his old house. But mostly he missed his parents. Even though things were hard, Daniel was too young to know what would happen next. The foster care system meant that Daniel would live with another family, one that could take care of him until his parents were able to be there again or until something else could be arranged. It was a scary thought for Daniel because he did not know these new people. He wondered if they would be kind, if they would like him, or if they would make him feel at home. His heart was full of hope, but also full of fear. Soon after, Daniel was introduced to Mrs. Helen. She was a middle-aged woman who lived in a small, cozy house on a quiet street. From the moment Daniel met her, something felt different. Helen had a warm smile and her eyes shone with kindness. She welcomed Daniel into her home with open arms and gentle words. The house smelled of fresh baked cookies and clean laundry, and there was a soft couch in the living room that looked very inviting. At first, Daniel was shy and quiet. He kept to himself, not sure how to act or what to say. But Helen was patient. She didn't rush him or force him to talk. Instead, she sat beside him, quietly, and let him feel safe. Slowly, Daniel began to feel that maybe this new place could be a home. Every Sunday, Daniel visited Helen's house. These visits started as short and simple, but each time they grew a little longer and a little more special. Helen would prepare something nice to eat, like homemade soup or a sandwich with fresh bread. They would sit together at the kitchen table talking about small things, the weather, school, or a funny story Helen shared about her own childhood. Daniel started to look forward to these Sundays. They became the bright spot in his week, a time when he could forget about his worries and just be a kid. Over time, Daniel and Helen developed a special bond. Helen was not just a foster mom. She became someone Daniel could trust. She listened to his stories and fears without judgment. When Daniel felt sad or scared, Helen was there to comfort him. She never made him feel like a burden or a problem. Instead, she treated him with love and respect, like he was a member of her own family. Helen also helped Daniel with things that other kids might take for granted. She made sure he had the clothes he needed, helped him with his homework, and encouraged him to dream big. Daniel was good at drawing and loved art, but he didn't know if anyone would believe in him. Helen saw his talent and told him to never give up. "You have a gift, Daniel," she said one day. "I believe in you." Because of Helen's kindness, Daniel began to feel more confident. He started to believe that maybe, just maybe, life could be better than he had imagined. Every Sunday, he looked forward to their time together. Helen's home was a place where he felt safe, loved, and important. The walls of that little house held more than just furniture and memories. They held hope, but it was not always easy. Daniel had days when he felt lonely and confused about where he truly belonged. Sometimes he wished he could live with his real parents again. Other times he wondered if Helen would want him, if she knew all his fears and mistakes. Yet, each Sunday, Helen showed him that family was not just about blood or perfect circumstances. It was about love, trust, and being there for each other. Helen never forced Daniel to call her mom, but he thought about it a lot. She was more like a mother to him than anyone else he had known. She was patient, kind, and always there. Sometimes, when Daniel went to bed after a Sunday visit, he thought about how lucky he was to have Helen in his life. Their bond grew stronger as months passed. Daniel started sharing more of himself, his dreams, his worries, and even his small victories. Helen was always ready to listen and to celebrate with him. When Daniel won a small art contest at school, Helen was the first person he called. When he had a bad day, Helen's warm words helped him feel better. Through all of this, Helen never acted like Daniel was a foster kid. She made sure he knew he was just Daniel, her friend, her student, her special person. And for Daniel, that meant the world. The routine of visiting Helen every Sunday became a part of Daniel's life. It was something he counted on when everything else felt uncertain. Even when Daniel's foster care placement changed for a short time, he kept coming back to Helen's house every week. That was his choice because Helen was not just a foster mom to him, she was family. Helen also shared stories from her own life. She told Daniel about the struggles she had faced, the mistakes she had made, and the happy moments she cherished. Daniel learned that everyone had challenges, but love and kindness could make life better. Those stories made Daniel feel connected, not just to Helen but to the world around him. As Daniel grew older, their Sunday visits remained special. They were a reminder that no matter what happened, there was someone who cared deeply about him. Helen's home was his safe place, his anchor in a world that sometimes seemed stormy. This deep bond between Daniel and Helen was more than just a friendship or a foster care relationship. It was a family connection built on love, respect, and trust. And even though Daniel did not know it yet, their story was just beginning. A story that would change both of their lives forever. As the weeks turned into months and then years, Daniel and Helen's relationship grew stronger and deeper. What had started as simple Sunday visits soon became a part of Daniel's life that he couldn't imagine missing. Every Sunday, like clockwork, Daniel would make his way to Helen's house carrying with him his school bag, a few drawings he was proud of, and sometimes a small gift for Helen, a flower from the garden or a card he had made. These visits were not just about spending time together. They were about building trust, sharing hopes, and growing a family in the truest sense. Helen became more than just a foster mom to Daniel. She became his closest friend and mentor. She knew when he was excited about something at school and when he was feeling worried or sad. On the days when Daniel came in with a big smile because he had done well on a test or had made a new friend, Helen's eyes would sparkle with pride. She would clap her hands softly and say, "That's my boy. I knew you could do it." Her encouragement made Daniel feel special, like he really mattered. But there were also days when Daniel felt tired or discouraged. Sometimes school was hard, sometimes friendships didn't go as planned, and sometimes, even though he had come to love Helen like family, he felt the emptiness of missing his birth parents. On those days, Helen was always patient and gentle. She never pushed Daniel to talk, but if he wanted to share, she was ready to listen without interrupting. She would hold his hand or give him a hug, letting him know he was not alone. Helen understood that love was not about grand gestures or perfect words. It was about small moments of kindness and being present. Sometimes they would sit quietly together, watching the sunlight move across the floor, simply enjoying each other's company. Daniel learned from Helen that it was okay to be vulnerable, and that real strength came from accepting help when it was needed. One thing Helen never missed was helping Daniel with his schoolwork. She believed education was the key to a better future, and she wanted Daniel to have every chance to succeed. When he struggled with math or reading, she would patiently sit beside him, explaining things again and again until he understood. She made study time fun by turning lessons into games or telling stories related to the subject. Her belief in Daniel's abilities gave him confidence he had never felt before. Daniel's talent for art blossomed during these years, and Helen was his biggest fan. She bought him sketchbooks and paints and encouraged him to keep drawing. Sometimes Helen would hang Daniel's pictures on the walls of her house, proudly showing them to visitors. "Look at what Daniel made," she would say with a smile. Daniel felt proud, not just because his work was admired, but because Helen believed in his dreams. Their Sundays were filled with little adventures, too. On nice days, they would walk to the nearby park, feed the ducks, or pick wildflowers. Helen taught Daniel how to plant seeds in her garden and care for the plants. These simple activities taught Daniel patience and responsibility. More importantly, They created happy memories that Daniel would carry with him always. Sometimes Helen would share stories about her own childhood and the lessons she had learned from her parents and life. She told Daniel about the times she made mistakes and how she had grown from them. These stories made Helen feel more like a real person to Daniel, not just a caregiver. He saw that everyone, no matter how strong they seemed, had their struggles. This helped Daniel accept his own challenges and mistakes without feeling ashamed. Helen also taught Daniel about kindness and helping others. She volunteered at local community centers and sometimes took Daniel along. Daniel saw how good it felt to give without expecting anything back. Helen explained that family was not just about who you were born to, but also about who stood by you, through thick and thin. For Daniel, who had known so much uncertainty, this was a comforting thought. As Daniel grew into a teenager, their relationship continued to grow. He began to trust Helen more with his secrets and feelings. Helen never judged him, even when Daniel made mistakes or made choices she might not have agreed with. She understood that growing up was hard and that everyone needed support. Helen also helped Daniel learn practical skills. She taught him how to cook simple meals, manage money, and take care of a home. These lessons were important because Helen knew Daniel would one day have to live on his own. She wanted him to be ready, not just to survive, but to thrive. Despite all the good things in his life, Daniel sometimes felt the pain of not having a permanent family. Foster care can feel temporary, and Daniel worried about the future. Would Helen always be there? Would he ever have a place to call truly his own? These thoughts sometimes kept him awake at night. But Helen's steady presence was a reminder that he was never truly alone. Over time, Daniel's feelings toward Helen deepened. He thought of her not just as a foster mom, but as someone who had become family by choice and love. Helen never pressured Daniel to call her mom, but he often thought about what that word meant. For him, Helen was everything a mother should be: kind, patient, loving, and always there when he needed her. Their Sunday visits were more than routine. They were a promise that no matter what happened, Daniel had a place where he was loved and valued. Helen's home was a sanctuary in a world that sometimes felt cold and unpredictable. One Sunday, when Daniel was about 15, Helen surprised him with a small gift, a simple photo album. Inside were pictures of Daniel from his earliest visits to that day. There were photos of his first school play, his art projects, their garden, and even silly moments of them laughing together. Helen told Daniel that she wanted him to have this album so he would always remember how far he had come and how much he was loved. Daniel looked through the album with tears in his eyes. For the first time, he truly felt the power of their bond. He wasn't just a foster child to Helen, he was family, and that family meant everything to him. Helen's kindness had given Daniel more than shelter and food. She had given him hope, confidence, and the feeling of belonging. Through her care, Daniel learned to believe in himself and to dream about a future he had never dared to imagine before. As the years passed, Daniel's visits to Helen continued without fail. No matter how busy his life became with school, friends, or other activities, he always made time for Helen. Those Sundays were sacred. They were a chance to reconnect, to share stories, and to remind each other that family was more than just a word. It was a feeling. Helen's role in Daniel's life was more than a caregiver. She was a constant source of love and support. Their relationship was proof that family is made by love, not just by birth. Daniel knew that no matter where life took him, Helen's influence would guide him forever. And deep inside, Daniel held a quiet hope that one day he could repay Helen for everything she had done for him. For now, though, he was simply grateful to have her in his life and to visit her every Sunday, where he found the love and warmth he needed to keep moving forward. Life had been good for Daniel and Helen for many years. Their Sunday visits were full of warmth, laughter, and comfort. But as time passed, Helen began to feel unwell. At first, it was just small things. She seemed more tired than usual, and sometimes she had trouble catching her breath. Daniel noticed these changes during his visits but didn't want to worry Helen or himself. He thought maybe she was just getting older and needed to rest more. Helen, however, was careful not to let Daniel see her pain. She continued to greet him with her usual smile and tried to keep their Sundays joyful, but inside she was scared. She had been diagnosed with an illness that was serious and would change everything. Helen knew that she didn't have much time left, and she wanted to make sure Daniel was prepared for the future. She worried about him being alone without her, about what would happen when she was gone. One Sunday, when Daniel arrived at Helen's house, he noticed something different. Helen was sitting quietly in her favorite chair, and she looked weaker than before. She didn't have her usual bright smile, and her eyes seemed sad. Daniel's heart ached. He wanted to be brave for her, but inside he felt scared too. Helen reached out and took Daniel's hand. "Daniel," she said softly, "there is something important I need to tell you." Daniel nodded, his throat tight with emotion. Helen explained that she had been sick and that the doctors said she might not get better. She told him how much she loved him and how proud she was of the young man he was becoming. Daniel felt tears well up in his eyes. He wanted to say so many things, that he loved her too, that he would always be there for her. But the words caught in his throat. Instead, he squeezed her hand tightly and sat beside her, trying to be strong. From that day on, Daniel visited Helen even more often. He wanted to spend every moment he could with her. Some Sundays they just sat together quietly, holding hands, or watching old movies. Other times they talked about memories, dreams, and what the future might hold. Helen shared stories from her past, and Daniel told her about his hopes for college and his art. Helen's illness made their time together even more precious. Daniel learned how to care for her in small ways, bringing her tea, helping her move around the house, and making sure she took her medicine. It was hard work, but Daniel did it gladly. Helen had done so much for him, and now it was his turn to be there for her. Even though Helen was sick, she never lost her kindness or sense of humor. She would often joke about how Daniel was becoming a better cook than her, or tease him about his messy art supplies. These moments of laughter helped both of them forget the sadness for a little while. As Helen's health got worse, Daniel's worries grew. He thought about what life would be like without her and felt a deep sadness, but Helen encouraged him to stay strong and to believe in himself. "You are ready for this, Daniel," she told him one afternoon. "You have everything you need to make your own way in the world." Helen also made sure Daniel knew he was not alone. She helped him connect with other people who cared about him, friends, teachers, and counselors. She wanted Daniel to have a support system so he would never feel lost or abandoned. One day, Helen called Daniel to her bedside and said, "I have made something for you. When the time comes, you will understand why it is important." She handed him a small envelope, carefully sealed. Daniel didn't open it right away. He trusted Helen and knew it must be something special. Despite the sadness, Helen and Daniel found comfort in their love for each other. Their bond was stronger than ever. Helen told Daniel that family is not only about being together in good times, but also about standing by each other through the hardest moments. The day finally came when Helen passed away peacefully in her sleep. Daniel was heartbroken. The house felt empty without her laughter and warm presence. But he also felt grateful. Grateful for the years they had shared, for the lessons Helen had taught him, and for the love that would stay with him forever. After Helen's funeral, Daniel returned to her house. As he sat in the quiet living room, he remembered her words and reached for the envelope she had given him. Inside, he found a letter and a small key. The letter was written in Helen's careful handwriting. In the letter, Helen explained that she had left him something very important, her home and all her belongings. She wanted Daniel to have a place where he could always feel safe and loved, just like he had in her house. The key was to that home, a symbol of trust and family. Daniel was overwhelmed by Helen's generosity. He never expected such a gift. It showed him how deeply Helen cared and how much she believed in his future. The house was more than just a building. It was a promise that their bond would live on no matter what. This unexpected inheritance gave Daniel a new sense of hope and responsibility. He realized that Helen's love had given him the strength to face life's challenges, With her gift, he could build a stable future for himself, a future filled with possibilities. As Daniel walked through the rooms of the house, he saw reminders of Helen everywhere: the garden she tended, the kitchen where they shared meals, and the walls, filled with his artwork. Each corner held memories of their Sundays together. It was a place where the past and the future met. Daniel understood that Helen's greatest gift was not the house or money, but the love and care she had shown him throughout the years. That love was his true inheritance, something no one could ever take away. With this new chapter beginning, Daniel felt ready to face the world. Helen's support had helped him grow into a confident young man. Now, with her legacy in his hands, he was determined to honor her memory by living a life full of kindness, courage, and hope. After Helen's passing, Daniel felt a mix of emotions swirling inside him. The sadness of losing the person who had been like a mother to him was heavy on his heart. Yet, there was also a quiet sense of responsibility and hope. He remembered the letter Helen had left for him, the key to her home, and the promise she made through her final gift. This was not just a house or money. It was a symbol of her love, trust, and belief in him. Daniel knew that with this gift, his life was about to change forever. The day of the will reading arrived, and Daniel sat quietly in the small office of Helen's lawyer. There were a few other people there, some distant relatives of Helen, and a social worker who had known Daniel for some time. Daniel felt nervous but tried to stay calm. When the lawyer began reading Helen's will, Daniel listened carefully. Helen had left everything to Daniel. The house, the savings she had, carefully built over the years, and many small treasures she had collected. It was clear she wanted Daniel to have a secure future. The house would be his forever, a place where he could build a home of his own. The money was to help him continue his education, pursue his dreams, and have a stable life, without worry. Hearing. These words made Daniel's heart swell with gratitude. Helen had always told him that family was about love and trust, not just blood. Now, she had shown it in the most powerful way possible. Daniel realized how lucky he was to have her in his life and how much she had believed in him all along. With the house and savings came a new responsibility. Daniel had to manage everything Helen left behind. At first, it felt overwhelming. He was still young, and the idea of handling finances and a home on his own was scary. But he remembered all the lessons Helen had taught him about responsibility, kindness, and believing in oneself. Slowly, he began to feel ready. Daniel moved into Helen's house. It was a small but cozy place filled with memories of their time together. The garden was still blooming with the flowers Helen had planted, and the walls held his artwork and photos of their Sundays. The house was more than just a building. It was a home filled with love. Living there gave Daniel a new sense of stability. He no longer felt like a boy in foster care, but a young man with a future. The quiet streets, the familiar rooms, and the warmth of Helen's legacy surrounded him with comfort. He was determined to honor her memory by making the most of this opportunity. With the financial support Helen left him, Daniel enrolled in college to study art, his passion since childhood. Helen had always encouraged him to follow his dreams, and now he could. The money helped cover his tuition, books, and even art supplies. For the first time, Daniel felt free to dream big and believe those dreams could come true. College was a new adventure. Daniel met many people, learned new skills, and worked hard to improve his art. He often thought about Helen during difficult times, drawing strength from her faith in him. Her gift was not just financial, but emotional, a reminder that someone cared deeply about his future. Even as he built this new chapter of his life, Daniel never forgot the kindness Helen had shown him. He wanted to give back, to help others, like her had helped him. Daniel began volunteering at local organizations that supported foster children and young adults. He shared his story, hoping to inspire others to believe in themselves no matter their past. Daniel's life was changing in many ways, but the lessons Helen taught him remained at the core. He learned that family is not only about who you are born to, but also about who stands by you and loves you unconditionally. Helen's gift was a powerful reminder of that truth. Over time, Daniel also began to repair relationships with some members of his birth family. While it was not always easy, he approached these connections with patience and hope. He knew that Helen's love had given him the strength to face these challenges with an open heart. The house became a place of healing and growth. Daniel invited friends over, shared meals, and created a space where others could feel safe and welcome. Just as Helen had opened her home and heart to him, Daniel wanted to do the same for others. Daniel's art flourished as well. He started showing his work in small galleries and local events. People admired his unique style and the emotion behind his paintings. Daniel often said that his art was a tribute to Helen, a way to express the love and hope she had given him. As the years went by, Daniel's gratitude for Helen never faded. Her gift had transformed his life in ways he could never have imagined. The house, the money, and the memories were all precious, but the greatest treasure was the love that had made it all possible. Daniel realized that Helen's legacy was not just what she left behind, but what she inspired in him. Her kindness had taught him to believe in himself and to give back to others. Helen's love was a light that would guide Daniel for the rest of his life. With each passing day, Daniel grew more confident and hopeful about the future. He knew there would be challenges ahead, but he also knew he was never truly alone. Helen's love, her gift, and the bond they shared would always be with him. A foundation strong enough to build a life full of meaning and joy. Helen had given Daniel more than material things. She had given him a chance to live fully and to love deeply. And Daniel was determined to honor that gift by living a life that made her proud. Years passed, and Daniel's life continued to grow and change in wonderful ways. The gift Helen left him, her home, her savings, and most of all, her love, became the foundation on which he built his future. But Daniel never forgot the lessons Helen taught him, and he made sure her memory stayed alive in everything he did. After finishing college, Daniel found a job as an art teacher at a local community center. Teaching gave him great joy because he could share his passion and help others discover their own talents. He often thought about the young Daniel who had once struggled with confidence, and now he was able to guide others on their journeys. Helen's belief in him had made all the difference. Daniel also continued to volunteer with foster children and families. He knew how important it was to have someone who cared and supported you, especially during difficult times. His own story inspired many young people who were facing challenges similar to those he had overcome. Daniel became a beacon of hope for those who needed it most. Helen's house remained Daniel's safe place, a home filled with memories and love. He cared for the garden she had planted, keeping the flowers blooming just as Helen had wanted. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, Daniel would sit by the window looking out at the garden and thinking about Helen. He felt her presence in the gentle breeze and in the colors of the flowers she loved so much. One day, Daniel decided to invite a few foster children from the community to his home for a special art workshop. He wanted them to experience the warmth and kindness that Helen had given him. The children laughed, painted, and shared stories. Daniel saw the same light in their eyes that Helen had seen in his all those years ago. That day, Daniel realized how much Helen's love had come full circle. What she had given him was not just for himself, but for the many lives he could touch. Helen's legacy was alive in every smile, every brushstroke, and every kind word Daniel shared. As time went on, Daniel also worked hard to build a life of his own. He made close friends, found love, and dreamed about starting a family. The thought of creating a home filled with love like Helen's gave him hope and happiness. He wanted to give his future children the same sense of security and belonging that Helen had given him. Daniel often thought about the Sunday visits he had shared with Helen. Those visits had been more than just a routine. They were moments of connection, learning, and love. They had shaped the person he had become and would continue to guide him throughout his life. One evening, as Daniel walked through the garden, he noticed a small bird building a nest in one of the trees. The bird's patience and care reminded him of Helen's quiet strength and endless kindness. He smiled, feeling grateful for the journey that had brought him here. Daniel knew that life would always have challenges, but he was ready. Helen had prepared him well, through her love, her lessons, and her faith in him. With her gift and her spirit, Daniel was confident he could face whatever came next. In quiet moments, Daniel sometimes read Helen's letter again. Her words gave him comfort and courage. They reminded him that family is built on love, trust, and support. He felt blessed to have had such a wonderful foster mom, and he promised himself he would live in a way that honored her memory every day. The house where Helen had welcomed him remained a symbol of hope. It was where Daniel had found safety and love, and where he had learned the true meaning of family. Now it was his turn to keep that light shining for others. Daniel's story was a beautiful example of how kindness can change a life. From a boy who once felt lost and alone, Daniel became a young man full of hope, love, and purpose. He had been given a second chance, a chance that Helen's love had made possible. And so Daniel lived his life with gratitude and kindness. He opened his heart to others just as Helen had opened hers to him. The legacy she left was not only a home or money, but a lifetime of love that would never fade. Because of Helen, Daniel knew that family is more than just who you are born to. Family is about those who love you without condition, who believe in you, and who help you grow. Helen was his family, and now Daniel made sure her love continued to grow and touch many more lives.